Every season, we all start at zero. What happened the year before doesn't mean anything. If you put the right amount of preparation in, whether it's into your car, your setup, your driving, or your work behind the scenes, but it takes all of those ingredients in the right dosages at the right times to win. Some drivers and teams have all the resources in the world and still can't win championships or races because they don't have those ingredients. Some teams come into the sport counting their dollars before they even start, but manage to defy the odds and win anyways. Having spent my entire career like that, you develop a habit of making sure that every cent you spend is in the right places, and spending money on crash or damage repairs isn't one of them. From that perspective, sometimes it does help to be underfunded, because every action you take means more than it would to someone who doesn't have to worry about it. No matter what your net worth is off the track, ending your race in a pile of smoking garbage on the side of the track is still worth 0 points, and a win is still worth 50. If you're smart with your resources, you can turn heads and defy the odds. This is the story of my 2022 Super Production Challenge season, where we defied the odds.
COVID-19 affected all of us in our own unique ways. It saw my plans for the 2020 season and beyond go up in flames in the blink of an eye, even though I did everything in my power to impress during my brief tenure in GT4 in CTCC. And for the longest time, as a result of having to sit on the sidelines, I thought I was done. I didn't think I'd be racing anymore. But then, I was able to keep my name in the game through various coaching opportunities and jobs. And along the way, I bumped into an old work colleague and friend, Marjan. He had been running and testing and tuning his own FRSs to go racing with throughout the course of the pandemic. And in November of 2021, he gave me a call and said, "Do you want to make some history?" So of course I said, "Yes, what are you talking about?" He said that he wanted to take his Scion FRSs and run them in the production class of the Super Production Challenge. Although that class has changed rules slightly and changed series and vice versa, it is a class that has been exclusively dominated by the minis since its inception in 2006. And Mark wanted to go down in history as being the first team and the first car to break that record.
Pre-season testing at iCar showed us that we were running comparable lap times to Sylvain Laporte's Blue Mini, the 2021 production class champion. Spirits were high entering round 1 at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. However, practice painted a bit of a grim picture. And then qualifying came and validated those fears. The pole time was a 1 minute 35.7. My qualifying time was a 1 minute 39.2. Naturally, my first thought was to look inside and take a look at my driving and see what I was doing wrong. However, my teammate Soyol Almeida was only running 3/10 behind. And to make matters worse, that pole time was set by Owen Clark, who was also running an FRS. We knew we had performance upgrades coming later in the season, but it was obvious we would need a bit of luck to stay competitive in this one, which is exactly what happened. There was a massive crash on the opening lap of the first race. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the footage of that crash, but there will be a link in the description to the channel of it. That crash not only happened to take out the race-leading cars of Owen and Christian Raymond's Honda Civic out, but it also totaled both of their cars. The race ended under a red flag and no results were recorded. There is a lot of missing footage from this race weekend, mostly because of what happened during race 2, which was scheduled to take place later that afternoon. But then something happened which affected not only the Apex V2R team, or Ryspec, or Octane Mini, nor anyone else even at CTMP, but something that affected everyone from Peterborough to Ottawa. An F1 Force tornado touched down at the racetrack, causing millions worth of damages and sending several people to the hospital, one in critical condition. The damage in the lower paddock was so severe, the FEL Championship opted not to compete at all the following day. Things at our paddock were a bit less extreme, so we did decide to compete the following day on Sunday. Here's some of the highlights of what now became the first race of the season.
following wet race shook up the championship order before it really even had time to be established. And as you notice in that montage, about 90% of the times I got overtaken, it was in a straight line. And the reason for that is because our original plans for developing the car was to fit the cars with turbos to help offset the weight disadvantage we knew we were going to be entering the race with. Unfortunately, we had to abandon that route days before the race began at Motorsport. So we were stuck with a heavier car that didn't really have a lot of power to do the job, which is why we were struggling so much. And it was just a bad stroke of luck that it happened to be at one of the biggest power tracks of the season. So we had a heavier car that was down on power. It was always going to be a rough weekend no matter what we did. However, we did have a plan moving forward, and we did come with some upgrades for the next rounds at Karl.
And we had minimal time to iron out those details. Round 2 was only 2 weeks later at Karl, my home race. We were able to make some modifications to the car, and at a track that suited my driving style and that I know well. I had my loyal sponsors, friends, and family there to push and cheer me on, so I had extra pressure to get a good result. Although testing ended with Swallow and I both getting top 3s throughout the day, it wasn't without difficulties.
No power. I was losing power slightly on the straight. I was feeling the car starting to fail, and then suddenly it just stopped.
My sponsors, Napa, Pembroke Auto Parts, and Lads Auto Recyclers, were both instrumental in coming through in a pinch to get a replacement for the broken fuel pump. Big thanks to them for their support on and off the track. We look to carry our momentum from testing into qualifying, and we're fully expecting a good result.
A 21.89, then a 22.98, then the next fastest was a 23.76.
And mine was a 27.
And yours was a 23.70.
Whoa! 600ths of a second!
We had managed to pull off a minor miracle. 2 weeks before, we were fighting to stay off the back row of the grid, and now we were in a position to challenge for a podium. I fell just shy of the podium in the first race, finishing 4th, and the following day I would line up on the grid in 4th place and finish there again. Traffic unfortunately did play a factor in that, as I was catching Kai Dayal in the final laps, but couldn't finish the job. The race start procedure in Super Production Challenge has the pole sitter roll a dice to set the grid for the final 2 races of the weekend. Whichever number the pole sitter rolls is the number of positions that get inverted on the grid for that race. And for the final race of the weekend, Owen Clark, the pole sitter, rolled a 7, inverting that many cars on the grid. My teammate Swallow would line up 3rd in class, I lined up in 4th, and then the madness began. Half a lap, I got myself into the lead. The chaos on that opening lap would see Owen and Kai fall down the running order. Their FRSs had the same corner speeds as me and slightly more straight line speed. The Minis, however, are slower than both of us in the corners, but have a higher top speed than the Ryspec FRS and the Apex V2R FRSs. All I could do was preserve my tires, defend the lead as much as possible, and then hope that everyone else overdriving their cars to catch me would see their tires lose performance at the end of the race, giving me an opportunity to strike back. despite my best efforts to defend, I was a sitting duck. There was a big gap to Nelson Chain in 4th, which was steadily growing lap after lap. And then a full course yellow came out and bunched up the field with 10 minutes to go. And on a track with as many straight stretches in Calabogie and the minis having much more speed than I did, my solid 3rd place podium was at risk of becoming a 6th place finish. I would have to put on a masterclass of defense in order to keep it.
En troisième position, in third place, Blok.
It wasn't the best drive of my career, but it was definitely the one that needed the most defending. Not only was it my first podium of the season, it was also the first podium for Apex V2R in real-life competition. And it gave me some well-needed points, as the protagonists for the title were beginning to be established.
We had a month off before the next round in iCar, and we were going to be doing some more R&D to the car to help shed some of that weight disadvantage that we had, plus try and get some power out of the engine as well, as opposed to taking the turbo route. We also did get a stroke of good luck in the rules as well. It had been determined that the domination by the FRS platforms across the entire production class thus far had been a bit too extreme, so the series decided to make some rule changes that helped bring our heavier cars back into contention. It was determined that the minimum weight for all of the FRS platforms would need to be raised by about 250 pounds, which was a big disadvantage for Ryspec because they had to add an extra 250 pounds into the car to meet the new minimum weight requirement. Whereas us in the Apex V2R cars could still take about 50 to 75 pounds out and still be within the rules.
Testing showed that although this did help, it was still not enough. The gap in qualifying at iCar went from approximately 1.5 to 2 seconds per lap down to about 0.7 to 1. We still had upgrades planned, but shipping issues meant that although we had the parts we needed, they arrived too close to the race to be installed in time.
I mean, I think at this point, I mean, cars are good. Yeah. It's just we need a little bigger hammer. Yeah. You know, you're right there. Your times are right there with Kai's.
Yeah.
So Connor and Owen, they were like second and a half faster. They were flying. Yeah. But yeah, you, Swelio, Kai, Sylvain Laporte, everybody was right. Chan Nelson was quick too. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody was right there.
I qualified in 4th for the first race, with 4 of the top 5 spots all going to FRS drivers. Footage went missing from the first race, but I had a bad start and fell down to 7th on the first lap. And then I made a misjudgment on lap 2 going for an overtake into 5th, and got involved into a moderate impact with Kai, and I limped home in 10th.
That's not as bad as I thought it was actually, but the steering was bad.
His car's pretty good though.
Hey?
His car's pretty good.
Did you even third before? I'm gonna go either way. That was mine. I gotta go say sorry to him right now.
The impact on my car appeared to be minimal, but my alignment was ruined. Also, the ABS failed and the engine went into limp home mode as a consequence of the accident. Fortunately, the damage was all cosmetic and there was no crash bill or spare parts needed. The same couldn't be said for Kai, whose door and quarter panel ended up being folded like a pretzel. Kai went on to finish 3rd. Although the damage to his car was also pretty extreme, it was mostly cosmetic. The minis were having trouble with tires delaminating and getting punctures all weekend, to the point where Sylvain Laporte had to pit with 2 laps to go in the second race, gifting me a 4th place finish after a race-long battle with him, and Nelson Chen was also struggling to hang on to a 7th place position. For the final race of the weekend, I would start in 3rd place, and here's how that race went. Because Nelson, Kai, and myself had various problems for our own reasons throughout the weekend. While Owen was winning the first 2 races and got a podium in the third, he was now starting to build a solid lead in the championship, while the fight for second was incredibly close. Connor Bell's amazing performance at iCar pulled him into the mix now too.
We had a month off before the next race, so we had plenty of time to do some more work on the upgrades we had planned, plus get the ones that had been delivered installed. The next race, though, was going to be at GP3R, and it's the crown jewel of the season. Everybody wants to win it. It's the Monaco of the SBC season. But just like Monaco, it does have something that it's known for. See if you can spot it.
Still battle in front. Oh, big time crossways for Leclerc.
Yeah, all those clips are just from this year.
Even though we went into this race weekend with a big jump in performance, the main theme for the weekend was to not die. I ended practice with mixed feelings. Swalio ended in the top 5 and the fastest FRS in the production class, but I finished down in 10th and 2 seconds off of his pace. But like any good race car driver, I came down with my excuses.
The rear end is loose. They're under braking and on entry. On at the apex and on exit. Other than that, it's good.
All of our upgrades had drastically changed the handling characteristics of the car, and being so far off the pace, desperate times called for desperate measures.
Like we've just changed. We've changed. How to throw like tire pressure in the mix? Yeah. Usually only change one item. Maybe 2 if you're down and out, but we've got 3 on the go here right now. I agree.
We know the difference between us and the 2 cars chasing ahead. And we know it's not, I don't think, a second and a half for tire pressure.
Because time is at a premium at GP3R, the race would start based on championship order, putting me in third for the first race of the weekend, the Twilight race. This race would bust the championship wide open. That start took me from third to first in just 3 corners and took a lot of super production cars with me on the way through. Unfortunately, I would lose the lead at the very next corner, and a full cross yellow was displayed immediately after. crash was a free position unto itself. But let's watch the broadcast to find out just how important that position was in the grand scheme of things.
Ooh, and it was more than that. It was Chan in the Mini. He caught the wall.
And just like that, I was now running second in the championship because Nelson would be scoring 0 points. That would be my final attempt to snatch the win, and I blew it. Meanwhile, Swallow and Owen were having their own battle for 7th place. So with Nelson scoring nothing in the first race, and Owen way down the running order, the gap at the top of the championship was getting closer and closer. From my almost win in the Twilight race, I spent the rest of the weekend in the shadows of the minis. Specifically, Nelson Chan's shadow, who went on to win both remaining races. It was obvious from the moment we arrived at this track that it was a track for the minis and their weekend to lose. I almost got myself another podium in the final race, but running 4th, the Super Production class leader lapped me. 22 seconds later, a full course yellow came out, guaranteeing that the best I was going to finish was 4th, and then on the final lap, I got overhauled down to 6th. This didn't help my case of narrowing that gap to Nelson and Owen. Heading into the finale, it was looking like it was going to be a showdown between them for the title. I did have a shot to win it, but I had to be flawless, and both Owen and Nelson needed to have bad luck. There was one final upgrade that we were bringing to the finale, and testing showed that we were on it. I topped the time cheats for the first time all season, and then immediately after that, disaster struck. Nelson crashed heavily, writing off the car. However, he was driving his teammate's car at the time. Due to the unique point structure of SPC, points in the championship were tied to the car, not to the driver. The day after, we went out for qualifying on a wet track that was rapidly drying, and then it was my turn to have a crisis.
Engine lights come on.
My ECU was having issues and preventing the car from blipping the throttle on downshifts. Owen qualified on pole, and I would be sitting down in 3rd, and with the title on the line, things were guaranteed to get spicy in this race. After a full season of trial and error, we finally caught our guy and passed him on merit. And then 2 laps later, something happened that changed everything once again. Yes, he is. The championship leader was parked on the side of the track, an activity that earns 0 points. Now, all I had to do was hold on for a few more laps.
Owen ran out of gas. Owen ran out of gas. I forgot to fill him. Oh my god!
Remember we were joking about a miracle?
We needed one and we got it.
I loved it. You were great out there.
Thank you.
Loved it.
Owen, if you are watching this, my heart does go out to you. It's the worst way to lose a race, especially with that much at stake. However, in one split instant, I went from being an outsider to a legitimate contender, and with just 1 race left. There would be no time to celebrate, as the next race would come only a few hours later, and this is how the championship looked. And this is how the points are structured. So the possible scenarios were, if I win the race and Owen finished 3rd or lower, I would be the champion. But if Carlos Tesler-Mabe, who was subbing in for Nelson, didn't finish at all, I would be the champion. won the race, and I finished second, and Carlos finished fifth. The official championship points had me only 6 behind Owen and 30 behind Nelson. Nelson and Team Octane winning the championship would continue the domination of the minis in the production class for yet another year.
It didn't really hurt me that much to miss out on the title, mostly for the fact that we spent most of the season on the back foot trying to develop the car, and it didn't even really look like that taking the championship home was going to be an option until the very last race of the season, and even then, I would need another car to not finish altogether while not making halfway into the race to score no points. Overall, it was an excellent learning year for everybody, and I can still walk away with my head held high, because although I could also ask, what if I didn't get lapped at an inconvenient time at Torvier? What if we had the R&D work done earlier in the season? Owen could also make the case of what if he didn't run out of gas with the second last race of the season? What if that crash at the start of the year didn't happen, which took him out? And Nelson could also say, if the results from that first race were recorded, he would have one more win to his name. He was leading when that red flag came out. What if he didn't crash in that first race in Torvier? Very high chance he could have won that first race too. What's happened's happened, and there's no point in playing the what if, who finished where. It doesn't matter, because like I said at the start of this video, every year we start at zero, and what happened before doesn't mean anything. It's about the work you put into the car, the testing you do, everything behind the scenes that matters to help put you at the front. And we're in a good position to challenge for a title next year. We just need to continue on the development road we're taking. In the meantime, thank you very much for your support throughout the season and in the past, and thank you to everybody who's watching. I'll see you next year.